Social media. We all use it. But when does it cross the line? At what point is what you claim online cross over and become criminal? Join us today as we dive into the mind of the visionary responsible for one of the most infamous festival failures in history, the Fyre Festival. My question for you is this. After you hear what you're about to hear, does this rise to the level of criminal activity? Is this social media influencer fraud? Was it all deception, a Ponzi scheme, or a scam? Or was it simply completely disorganized and faced with uncontrollable challenges? You don't need to be a lawyer to make a call on this one, especially in light of the redemption story and the current plans to hold, and I kid you not, a Fyre Festival 2.0, slated to happen in the coming months this spring. Can a convicted fraudster truly redeem himself with a sequel to the event that landed him in prison in the first place? We want to hear what you have to say. Text our studio direct at 904-867-4466. That's 904-867-4466. Let us know what you think. Thanks for watching and listening. And now the show. What if I told you that a single Instagram post from Kendall Jenner cost $250,000 and helped create one of the biggest festival disasters in history? The Fyre Festival wasn't just a failed event. It was a masterclass in social media deception and fraud.
And the crazy thing is that $250,000 post was just the tip of the iceberg. They spent millions on influencer marketing without disclosing any of it was paid advertising. The event was promoted on Instagram by Kardashian family socialite Kendall Jenner, who was paid $250,000 and has since deleted the post. Bella Hadid, Emily Ratajkowski, Hailey Baldwin, Elsa Hosk, Chanel Iman, Lais Ribeiro, Alessandra Ambrosio, Shanina Sheikh, Nadine Leopold, Rose Bertram, Giselle Oliveira, Hannah Ferguson, and other niche actresses and media personalities.
Scheduled for 2 weekends in April and May 2017, the event sold day tickets at prices from $500 to $1,500 and VIP packages, including airfare and luxury tent accommodation, for $12,000. Customers were promised accommodation in modern, eco-friendly geodesic domes and meals from celebrity chefs. The final advertised lineup was for 33 artists.
Ratajkowski was reportedly the only actress or model to use the hashtag ad, but has also since deleted the post. Only later was it reported that Jenner and the others had been paid to make the posts, something they were required under federal law to disclose.
Yep. Saw that. The Federal Trade Commission later even explained that the ad only works at the beginning of paid post, and that the hashtag alone itself is not a sufficient disclaimer. Hadid acknowledged participating in the promotion and apologized. 31. Baldwin revealed that she donated her entire payment to charity after seeing the aftermath of the event. 32. You know what's fascinating about the whole thing? Billy McFarland and Jay Rule managed to convince people to spend up to $12,000 per ticket, based almost entirely on Instagram posts and FOMO marketing.
That's right. And they were selling this dream of luxury villas and gourmet meals on Pablo Escobar's private island, which wasn't even true. McFarland also founded a card company called Magnesis, which promised members paying an annual $250 fee that they could unlock their cities and take their lives to the next level, including private members-only concerts, tastings with notable chefs, and exclusive art previews at top galleries. The Washington Post reported that some of those benefits never materialized or were far from what was advertised.
And speaking of that island, the whole thing started falling apart when McFarland couldn't stop bragging about the Pablo Escobar connection, which violated their agreement with the actual owners of Norman's Cay.
So they lost their original location and had just a few months to basically build a luxury festival from scratch on a different island. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Well, according to the professional festival consultants, they approached everything. These experts told them it would need at least $50 million and an extra year of planning to pull off what they were promising.
But instead of listening to that advice, McFarland literally started Googling how to rent a festival stage. That's like trying to perform surgery after watching a YouTube tutorial.
The financial side was even more outrageous. They convinced people to load about $2 million onto these special RFID payment bracelets for the cashless festival, and then used 40% of that money to pay off a short-term loan. Reports from the festival mentioned various other problems, such as the mishandling or theft of guests' baggage, no lighting, an unfinished gravel lot, a lack of medical personnel and event staff, no cell phone or internet service, insufficient portable toilets, no running water, and heavy-handed security. As the festival had been promoted as a cashless event, many attendees lacked money for taxi fare or other expenses.
That sounds suspiciously like a Ponzi scheme. No wonder McFarland ended up with a 6-year prison sentence. I mean, it turns out he was friends with that Anna Delvey girl from Inventing Anna, who herself was a fraudster and went to jail.
Yep, exactly. And let's talk about what actually happened when people arrived. They found FEMA disaster relief tents with soaking wet mattresses instead of luxury villas, and those now infamous cheese sandwiches in styrofoam containers instead of gourmet meals.
Initial arrivals were taken to an impromptu beach party at a beachside restaurant, where they were plied with alcohol and kept waiting for around 6 hours, while frantic preparations at the festival site continued. McFarland had hired hundreds of local Bahamian workers to help build the site. Meanwhile, organizers had to renegotiate the guarantees they offered to the people who would be playing at the festival as costs spiraled out of control.
Later arrivals were taken directly to the grounds by school bus, where the true state of the festival's site became apparent. Their accommodations were little more than scattered disaster relief tents with dirt floors, some with mattresses that were soaking wet as a result of the morning rain. And all of this was filmed by their phones and shared on social media while it was happening, instead of the gourmet food promised. There was nothing more than inadequate and poor quality food, such as cheese sandwiches served in foam containers.
I read that although there were only about 500 people, there were not enough tents and beds for the guests. Attendees were unable to leave the festival for the nearby Sandals resorts, as it was peak season, with almost every hotel on Great Exuma already fully booked for the annual Exuma Regatta. Around nightfall, a group of local musicians took to the stage and played for a few hours. This was the only performance to actually occur. In the early morning, it was announced that the festival would be postponed, and the attendees would be returned to Miami as soon as possible. Billy McFarland has shown a disturbing pattern of deception, which resulted in investors and customers losing over $26 million in 2 separate fraud schemes, prosecutors said after Billy was arrested. As he had previously admitted, Billy McFarland did not deliver on his promises to his investors and customers. McFarland found out the hard way that empty promises don't lead to jet-setting, champagne, and extravagant parties. They lead to federal prison. Prosecutors said McFarland repeatedly misrepresented the income of Fyre Media Inc. to investors, claiming his company made millions off of talent bookings that in reality made less than $60,000. He also told investors in the Fyre Festival they would have the rights to payouts from festival event cancellation insurance policies, though no insurance policy existed.
Prosecutors had pushed for a 15-year prison sentence, but McFarland's attorneys asked for leniency, claiming he suffered from mental health issues. A representative for McFarland said in a statement later on Thursday that they were appreciative of the careful consideration of the court. Oh man, those cheese sandwiches became such a perfect symbol of the whole fiasco. They went from promising uniquely authentic island cuisine with a $6 million catering budget to serving basically prison food. The real victims weren't just the festival goers, though. Hundreds of local Bahamian workers never got paid for their work, including a restaurant owner who catered for the staff and lost her life savings.
That's right, though at least there was some justice there when the Netflix documentary came out, and people raised over $200,000 through crowdfunding to help her.
People were outraged when Marianne Rollo, the caterer at the resort in the Bahamas, revealed she had lost her entire life savings in order to feed Fyre Festival staff. She said that in the run-up to the festival, she was forced to cater for more than 200 workers with just 10 staff members at all hours of the day.
Thankfully, after a documentary aired, a GoFundMe page was set up to help Roll, exceeding its target of $123,000. Her husband, Elvis Roll, said Marianne felt overwhelmed by the attention, but is grateful for the support she received. It means everything. It means we get something back from everything we put in, he said. It is like God is watching over us, she said. The chaos inspired 2 documentaries, one on Hulu and the other on Netflix, which recounted the sordid tale of Fyre Festival and how its fraudulent founder, Billy McFarland, allowed things to go so horribly wrong.
One of the most memorable moments in the documentary was when McFarland's mentor, Andy King, the famous New York event planner, revealed he was willing to perform oral sex on a Bahamian official in order to secure water for the festival. Prepared to go through with it, King said he went home, took a shower, and drank some mouthwash.
Not long after the documentary had aired, King became the subject of a wealth of hilarious memes, a response he said he was completely blown away by. Despite the whole saga, King told LA Times that he has not cut ties with McFarland. In March 2018, McFarland pleaded guilty to 1 count of wire fraud to defraud investors and ticket holders, and a 2nd count to defraud a ticket vendor while out on bail. In October 2018, McFarland was sentenced to 6 years in prison and ordered to forfeit $26 million.
McFarland was facing charges related to both the Fyre Festival, where he used popular celebrities to help him convince people to spend thousands of dollars on tickets and flights to an event that never took place, and also for running a fake ticket-selling business that scammed unsuspecting victims out of at least $150,000. McFarland pleaded guilty to 2 counts of wire fraud in March related to the failed festival. He pleaded guilty to 2 more counts related to the ticket scam in July that year.
Yes, and life in prison was real for him. Since he first reported to lockup, McFarland has served time at prisons in New York, where he worked an overnight job in a sewage treatment plant, Oklahoma City, and Ohio, where he contracted COVID-19. He applied for compassionate release on medical grounds in April 2020, while at the Elkton Federal Correctional Institution in Lisbon, Ohio, but was denied.
McFarland was then held at the Milan Federal Correctional Institution in Milan, Michigan, as inmate number 91186-054. He was eventually released on August 30th, 2023, according to Bureau of Prison Records.
The Milan prison where he was incarcerated is described as a low-security facility designed for 1,495 men. Prisoners are expected to follow strict routines and rules, as detailed in a prisoner handbook. Daily life starts early, with breakfast on weekdays from 6 to 7 a.m., followed by lunch at 10:30 a.m. and dinner at 4:30 p.m. Inmates must wear their shirts tucked in during the week from 7:30 a.m. until 4 p.m., but can go untucked on weekends and holidays. Prisoners can receive mail, but it is opened and inspected, except for legal correspondence. Newspapers and certain books are allowed, but electronic communication devices are not, though that rule appears to be widely flouted, and cell phones are plentiful.
While McFarland has not been caught with a cell phone, he has made several phone calls, at least some of which he had to pay $3.15 per 15 minutes, including instances in which he told reporters of his COVID diagnosis and that he was being sent to an isolation room along with 160 other positive cases. He's also phoned in to participate in a podcast he started in 2020 called Dumpster Fire. I was in the midst of a 3-month stint in solitary confinement, he said on the first episode. It was the hardest but most impactful period of my life. After authorities got wind of the podcast, McFarland was punished according to his attorney Jason Russo, who told Insider that McFarland was accused of violating a number of rules and was sent to solitary confinement for 90 days.
Prison authorities later dropped all the administrative charges, except for one forbidding inmates from sharing commissary funds, Russo told the outlet. But this wasn't his first infraction behind bars. In the summer of 2019, McFarland was caught with a prohibited recording device.
The Bureau of Prisons tells A&E True Crime that inmates possessing contraband is an ongoing problem that it fights on a number of fronts.
The Bureau of Prisons continually evaluates and deploys as appropriate contraband detecting technologies, including walk-through metal detectors and whole-body imaging devices, a spokesperson says in an email. In addition, we have employed enhanced staffing patterns in high-security prisons, as well as strengthened internal security procedures. Life at Milan also includes jobs for physically and mentally able inmates, but prison officials would not comment on McFarland's assignment. Vocational and occupational training programs are based on the needs of the inmates, general labor market conditions, and institution labor force needs, the agency says. And unit leaders deciding on prisoners' job assignments take into consideration the inmate's capacity to learn, interests, requests, needs, and eligibility.
Though the Fyre Fest debacle took place 8 years ago, McFarland remains a figure of public interest, having been showcased in multiple documentaries. McFarland was also friendly in real life with another notorious New York-based fraudster, Anna Sorokin, who also went by the name Anna Delvey. Sorokin was convicted in 2019 of grand larceny and theft of services for scamming high-end hotels and others out of about $275,000. In 2013, Sorokin lived rent-free place at McFarland's New York headquarters for his company, Magnesis. The card-based membership company, targeted to millennials looking for VIP perks, was also a scam.
Oh wait, I almost forgot. My research showed this gem. McFarland is reportedly writing a self-published memoir with a working title of Prometheus, the God of Fire, according to New York Magazine. But the book has yet to come out. On May 18, 2022, TMZ reported that McFarland was released from prison early, on March 30, 2022. He was transferred to community confinement, where he is expected to stay until August. In an interview with Good Morning America that aired on November 4, 2022, McFarland apologized to those affected by his fraudulent actions. I need to apologize, and that is the first and the last thing that needs to be done, McFarland said. I let people down. I let down employees. I let down their families. I let down investors. So I need to apologize. I'm wrong and it's bad. McFarland has an estimated $26 million in restitution he needs to pay investors, vendors, and concertgoers of Fyre Festival. McFarland revealed he plans to launch a venture called PYRT, though details haven't been made public yet, but understands he'll need to earn back trust. I hope I continue to change for the next 40 years, he said. So I'm certainly not done changing yet. Billy was partially made a free man when he was released early from prison and transferred later to a halfway house in Brooklyn, New York.
One such investor is John Nemeth, who works as a director of a construction company in New York and says he lost $180,000 of his life savings by trusting McFarland. Nemeth tells Rolling Stone that it was a joke to learn that the failed entrepreneur was sprung out of prison early. The man should be in jail for the rest of his life. He ruined my life. He says, I'm never going to recoup that money. He stole it. He has no business being out of jail. That's what happens when you are born from rich parents and you can afford the best lawyers, but you can't pay back the people that you've robbed. Federal prosecutors argued that U.S. District Court Judge Naomi Buchwald should sentence McFarland, whom they described as the consummate con artist, to a minimum of 15 years and 8 months behind bars. He betrayed and deceived his investors, customers, and employees while he was living the high life at his luxury apartment, traveling to exclusive locales, staying at luxury hotels, being chauffeured in his Maserati, and entertaining himself and his friends at restaurants, bars, and casinos, prosecutors wrote. McFarland did try to get a jump on his next business venture while behind bars. When COVID-19 was spreading quickly across prisons in spring of 2020, McFarland launched Project 315, a nonprofit venture aimed at helping prisoners reach their families and loved ones from behind bars by spotting inmates the $3.15 for a 15-minute call home. As of publication of this article, the site is no longer active. The terms of the agreement do stipulate that McFarland remain under supervisor release for 3 years, placing him under the jurisdiction of the U.S. Probation Office. He is required to check in with a probation officer regularly. Also under the deal, McFarland is required to work at least 30 hours per week at a lawful type of employment, unless the probation officer excuses you from doing so.
In October 2020, McFarland began another side hustle, this time starting a podcast called Dumpster Fire. At long last, the uncensored, complete story of Fyre Festival, with Billy McFarland and many others, read the description. But after 8 episodes, the plan was derailed when McFarland was put in solitary confinement for 90 days for his involvement in the short-lived podcast. Prior to his stint in solitary confinement for the secret podcast, McFarland was busted for a significant disciplinary action in 2019, according to Airmail, when New York prison officials found he had smuggled in a recording device that was hidden inside a pen. He was reportedly given 40 days in solitary confinement for the infraction.
While McFarland's attorney says he's focused on paying back his victims, the government has already shown signs of doubting his commitment to making amends, according to Airmail. The entrepreneur had been approached by both Netflix and Hulu to appear in their rivaling documentaries about the shit show of a festival when McFarland allegedly tried to hustle Netflix director Chris Smith out of $250,000 to be interviewed for the project. When Smith turned him down, McFarland countered for $125,000. McFarland eventually went with Hulu, whose co-director Jenner First said McFarland was paid much less than $250,000. But none of the money McFarland earned from participating in the documentary ever found its way to his victims, Airmail reported.
And some 277 ticket holders who thought they finally came to an end of their legal battle with Fyre Festival organizers last year when they reached a $2 million settlement agreement, later learned their expected $7,200 payout would actually be closer to $280. The festival's bankruptcy trustee told a New York court that payout would have to be drastically reduced because it only had $78,000 in its coffers, after setting aside a remaining $1.1 million for accountants and legal costs.
You know what's absolutely mind-blowing? McFarland is now trying to do it all again. He's announced Fyre Festival 2 for 2024, and the first batch of tickets apparently sold out within a day. Scheduled to run from April 25th to April 28th next year, Fyre Festival 2 will take place on a privately owned island off the coast of Mexico. And despite only being months away, the festival has not yet booked any artists.
Still, in an interview with NBC News, McFarland insisted that Fyre Festival's sequel won't be a repeat of its first act. For starters this time round, he claimed that he has hired a festival production company to handle the stages and the bathrooms and all the stuff that I clearly don't know how to do. McFarland didn't name the production company, but in a separate interview with the Wall Street Journal, he said that it has bought a 51% stake in the Fyre Festival's parent company, Fyre Media. The presale tickets listed on the Fyre Festival 2 website would add up to nearly $1.2 million if they all sell. Festival passes start at $499 and are set to eventually reach $7,999. Plus, he is offering $200 hoodies and other merchandise, including hats and sweatpants. But that doesn't mean he'll get to keep all that cash for himself. McFarland may be free of his prison sentence, but he is not free of his debt to the people he fleeced. The court ordered the controversial entrepreneur to make financial amends to the investors and ticket vendors who were duped by McFarland's fantastical promises of yore.
That means McFarland is forced to fork over a portion of any money he makes, including the speaker's fee he earned on his trip to Germany, although exactly how much remains unclear. McFarland's lawyer, Jason Russo, has previously said that his client is committed to repaying the roughly $26 million he owes for his crime. Any new projects that he does become involved in will be done solely for the purpose of generating the restitution for paying back his victims, Russo said.
In a post on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, McFarland explained that all presale ticket revenue for the upcoming festival will be held in escrow until the final date is announced. Jennifer Taub, author of the book The Big Dirty, about white-collar crime, and a professor of law at Western New England University School of Law, told NPR she teaches a section of her class on McFarland. "It's really hard to understand what's going on here," Taub said after watching the YouTube video in which McFarland claims that he has signed a deal with a production company to put up a Broadway musical version of the Fyre Fest saga. He also discloses that he has partnered with the biggest and best TV companies in the world to produce a documentary called After the Fire. He's trying to make it look like you buy the tickets and it'll be a great event, but it's unlikely he will have the funds to pay A-lister stars to perform at the festival based on the ticket sales, Taub said. "Where's that money supposed to come from?" She added, "This is looking a lot like a Ponzi scheme."
Like Levine, Taub speculated that prosecutors are keeping a close eye on McFarland's new money-making scheme. She listed a slew of concerns they might have. You'd want to see where the money is going. Is he putting this into bank accounts? Is he paying people back with it? Is he paying for his new shoes? Is he drawing a salary from it?
Another thing prosecutors are likely watching is the nature of the language of McFarland's advertising. And so far, Taub said, he's doing a good job of avoiding potential accusations of fraud. "When I look at the website, he's really not saying much. He's not promising much. He's just saying he's planning something, so buy tickets," she said.
Indeed, there is little specific information on the site. The only real details are the cost of tickets and a date, December 6, 2024. But an asterisk next to it clarifies even that is not set in stone. McFarland manages to elude any description of what Fyre Festival 2 will entail or where in the Caribbean it will actually take place. There is no mention of music or specific artists. The only concrete detail is found under the description of what a Fyre Pass gets: a buyer, one ticket to Fyre Festival 2, as well as immediate VIP access to Fyre events, experiences, and community.
Well, that really shows how powerful the allure of exclusivity and social media hype still is, even after such a public disaster.
The whole saga really exposed the dark side of influencer marketing. When you look at the numbers, 8 different lawsuits, $26 million in forfeited assets, and countless lives affected. It's amazing how much damage a few carefully crafted Instagram posts can cause.
And yet, here we are, watching history potentially repeat itself. I guess some people really believe in second chances. Or maybe they just want to be part of the next viral moment, regardless of how it turns out.
The legacy of Fyre Festival goes beyond just a failed music festival. It's become a cautionary tale about the power of social media influence and how easily people can be manipulated by the promise of an exclusive experience.
Let's just hope this time around they at least have a better plan than Googling how to organize a festival.
Great point. Thanks for joining and sharing this story with us, Chris. Well, that wraps this up. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our episode. The next one is coming right up. We appreciate you making this an award-winning podcast and downloading on Apple and Spotify and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and we thank you for watching.